There is a minhag Yisrael, a custom among the Jewish people, that on the Shabbos before Bris Milah, usually the night before Friday night, whenever the bris is during the week, there's something called the Shalom Zachor. And the Ramah brings it down in Shulchan Aruch in Hilchos Milah, Yeredeya Simin Reis Samachei Sif Yud Beis, Maybe Mea Trumas Hadeshen B'Shem HaTosfos. He quotes from the Trumas Hadeshen in the name of the Bali Tosfos. O Nagu Lasso Suda Umishta. There's a custom to have a special Suda. Most people just have a post Suda. People come after the meal, have a little party. But Leil Shabbos La'achar Shanolad Zachor. That after you have a male child, Nechnasim Eitzel Atinak, you go by the house of the Tinak, or it could be in Shul, anyone's house. Vehu Gam Kein Sudas Mitzvah. So the Ramah even talks about a Suda and a Sudas Mitzvah. The minhag seems to be today that people come usually after the meal, or if it's to go to the people's house, maybe they're still continuing the meal. So that's the minhag brought down by the Ramah in the name of the Trumas Hadeshen and the Bali Tosfos. And the Taz, in Sifkat and Yud Gimel, he brings different reasons for this custom. What is the basis for this custom of the Shabbos before the Bris Milah? One has a Sudas Mishta, a party in honor of the newborn child. So the first reason given, Trumas Hadeshen Kosev Zel Yeshua Haben Haniskor V'Gemara, the salvation of the child, V'hi Sudas Hodah Al Shanitzel Haben Misakanas Haleda. It's basically a Sudas Hodah. It's a meal of Thanksgiving that even though today with modern technology we take for granted, we look at childbirth as just a normal part of life, and you're not going to have, as the Bali Musar always point out, it's actually a greater miracle, a child being born, than it is for Tchiyas HaMesim, for resurrecting the dead. However, if you're an editor of a newspaper, which ones you're going to put on the headline? You're not going to put child born, or you're going to do resurrection of the dead, because that doesn't happen that often. But resurrection of the dead, the Bali Musar explained, is the body's already there, you just have to resurrect it. As even a greater miracle, a child being born from a tipat sucha, from yesh me'ayin. You're creating something out of nothing. It's a much greater nes. So with modern technology, we don't realize the sakana involved, certainly for the mother, as well as the child. And therefore, it's kind of a sudas hodah that the mother and the child survived the pregnancy and the childbirth, and it's a recognition, like everything else. We have akaras atov. We want to thank God that everyone is healthy. So that's the one reason brought down. Based on this reason, I think it's the question of the Dagul Merivava. If that's the case, why should it be limited to Shalom Zachor? We should also have a Shalom Bas. Well, what's the difference? If it's a male or female, it's the same Yeshua. The fact that a woman survived the daughter, and certainly it's the same for the mother, whether it's a boy or a girl. So why don't we find the similar custom regarding a Shalom Bas? So actually, if you look in the Rishonim, I think it's the Riyaz, the Ramban, and Torah Sa'adam, they do talk about this concept. They talk about a Shvua Saben Rabbas. They talk about it in different contexts. It might not have been the same thing, but they talk about that there was some type of form of celebration as well for a Nekeva. So if this is the only reason, so there really shouldn't be a difference between a Shalom Zachor and a Shalom Bas. However, the Taz brings down some additional reasons which might explain more the minhag of why it's usually limited to a Zachor and not a Nekeva. The second reason brought down is just to quote a line or two from the Taz. the lo taviu lefnei karban asher tavar alav Shabbos. You shouldn't. It's like when you bring a carbon to a Kadosh Baruch, one animal, you want to make sure you have it. The animal goes through a Shabbos. She'ein zayin yomim below Shabbos, because we know every week has Shabbos, and therefore day 8. Ve'ein milah below Shabbos. That's why milah is on the 8th day. You can't have a milah before Shabbos. In other words, you want to make sure the Shabbos should be a hukshur for the milah. You want to make sure that before you do the circumcision, the first mitzvah that the child is going to be doing, perhaps, is you want it to be. You want him to have Shabbos to go through. The Rambam and more in the book seems to say it's a physical thing, but even on a spiritual level, people point out you want the child to be spiritually prepared. So that's the second reason. It has to do with Milah. So that would explain why it's usually limited to a Shalom Zachor, not a Shalom Bas. The third reason brought down, the Drisha, others, Masha Noagim b'Shabbos Govaker Eitzel Atina Kanolad Shehu Avel al Toraso Shashachach Kedeisa. So he writes and introduces a new concept of Nicham Avelim. It's Nicham Avelim on the child who, we have a tradition, Chazal tell us, the Gemara in Nida, before a child is born, while he's in the fetus, in the womb, you have a Malach Hashem who teaches the child Kol HaTorah Kulo. In fact, that's the famous joke in the Welt that when the Torah tells us about Yisroel Tzu Habanim Bekirba, when Rivka was having a hard time during pregnancy, and she went to Shem Be'ever to find out what's going on, so part of the problem was she was perplexed. When she walked by a church, there was movement. When she walked by a yeshiva, there was movement. As Chazal say, Esav tried to get out by the church, and Yaakov by the yeshiva. So the kasha is, where's Yaakov running? We have a tradition that the Malach Hashem is teaching you Kol HaTorah Kulo. So you're not going to get a better Rebbe than that. So how come? So the belt says, oh, with a chavrusa like Esav, you want out of there. But either way, we have a tradition that Malach Hashem teaches us Kol HaTorah Kulo. And therefore, when you come out, you get a little patch, and therefore you forget the whole Torah. And therefore, it's a Nicham Avelim on the Torah Shashachach. Those are the three reasons brought down by the Taz. So I understood there were three reasons: is Sudas Haldah, that everyone's healthy, that you need a Shabbos to get ready for the meal, like every animal has to go through a Shabbos to be brought as a karban. And the third reason, Nicham Avelim, that on the Torah that was forgotten. So Bishu, I understand the first two reasons, Sudas Haldah, why are you going through a preparation with the Shabbos? I understand why it's a simcha, why it's a sudas mitzvah, it's a suda of a mishnah. But if it's nicham avelim, we don't usually go for a party. It's not a party atmosphere. You're going to comfort the mourner. So why is this a celebration then? If it's nicham avelim, why are we celebrating? So the Mefarshim point out, they refer you to the famous Hakdama to the Iglei Tal, when he talks about the mistake people make in terms of what is the highest level of learning. Is some people think, erroneously he points out, that the highest level of learning is learning because I have to learn, because it's like I shake lulav, I shake kaksi v'Hashem. In fact, I should pick a part of learning I'm not even interested in, find boring, but that's the highest level. I'm learning for the sake of learning, and that's it. I'm not saying there isn't anything to that, but the Iglei Tal says it's not the highest level of learning. The highest level of learning is just the opposite. It's the tainug, it's the enjoyment of learning. If you want to learn Gemara, Chumash, Navi, Machshava, whatever Mashalibo Chafetz, that's the highest level, because as the Vilna Gaon says, it's never going to work if you're learning Torah like you're shaking a lulav, because Kach Siva Hashem, you never become a Talmud Chacham, you never become a Torah scholar, like they say by Lech Lecha, by Aaron. If Avram was just going to go because God commanded him, he didn't want to go, he really wasn't into it, but he was going because it was the right thing to do. Lech Lecha, as Rashi writes, Lahanaskach. For it to be successful, you have to realize it's for your own benefit. So the Iglei Tal writes, the ultimate ikar of Torah is the Tainug. And therefore, based on this Iglei Tal, the commentators point out, is why are we, what are we celebrating at the Suda Shalom Zachor? When Nachem, we're comforting the mourner, on the child, I should say, on the great loss that they have. Yedias kol Torah kulo, knowing the whole Torah. However, but now that the point is you once were taught the Torah, so therefore, and really, we have the opposite problem, that we forget everything, but really, Shechet Torah is really a blessing, because if we never would have forgot it, if we would have came out knowing everything, then there wouldn't be a good schmack of learning. You know everything, there's reviewing, it's not the same. It was the tremendous gift that it gave us a shecha so we could go back and learn Torah with the appropriate tadig and go into it much more deeply. And that's why it's a simcha. That shechet Torah, and therefore we were zameach now when the child gets older and starts getting involved in Torah, so the Torah will bring the ultimate simcha, it will bring a chiddush. And therefore that's the pshat, that's why even the Nicham Avelim here is a reason to celebrate. So whether it's for the Sudas Hodah, or whether it's the Shabbos to be Maksharim, or whether it's Nicham Avelim, it's a tremendous simcha, and that's the Minhag Yisrael of having a Shalom Zachor the Friday night before the Bris Milah.